There'll be, I'm sure, some folks who will be joining as we meet. It's good to see you all, and we've got a new year, and we're gonna make it as happy as we can make it in the work that we're all doing. We know that there's some challenges coming down the pike, but I think that there's a lot of hope in terms of the energy and the passion that everybody has to keep the ball rolling towards justice. So yeah, so welcome. Is there anybody here right now that it's your first time being at this meeting? Okay, Tamara, you want to introduce yourself and where you're from?
Sure, and I will apologize in advance. I have a new puppy who is barking, so I'll get through this quickly. I am Tamara Garrison. I am with the WISBA Family Law Section Executive Committee, and I'm just attending to uh, information because we'd like to be able to help in any way that we can. And so I will probably sit here mostly mute so you don't have to listen to my dogs barking.
Okay, well, welcome. We're happy to have you here. And there's a lot of different folks here that you may know and some that maybe you'll get to know. So thank you for being here. And thanks everyone else for being here. I see Murph is getting on and Antonio's here. Great. Emily, Jim, Zaida. Zaida. Am I pronouncing that right?
Zaida, yes.
Zaida.
Well,
Okay.
hello.
Okay, just want to make sure. And see Michael Terasaki and Dusty, thank you for being here because some of you all are on the agenda. So let's take care of a little bit of business here. And like I said, there'll be people that'll be joining us as we go along. So let's take care of the minutes from the last meeting. If board members have had a chance to read it, is there any discussion, any questions, or any corrections to those minutes? If not, we have a motion to approve the minutes. I need from the board. Who was that?
Mercedes.
Okay, great. So Mercedes, do you have a second?
I'll second.
Lally? Okay, great. All those in favor, board members, please raise your hands or say yes. Yes.
Aye.
Great. Thanks, Yvette. Okay, so I think, yeah, so that passes the minutes. Thank you, everybody. So we have a busy agenda, so we're just going to get going. And Antonio, you are here. I think I saw you. There you are. There you are. And he is going to give us a legislative overview. Thank you for being here, for doing this. Appreciate
Thanks for the invitation, Mr. Adams. Thank you, everybody. In a few minutes, I probably would just start with saying, my goodness, what a difference a day makes. If I would have been doing this presentation at this time yesterday, I would be talking about what we don't know related to the upcoming legislative session. Governor Inslee put out a budget that seemed to address the fears around cuts by providing a newish revenue source called the wealth tax that would have taken care of all those issues, and we wouldn't have this major crisis in front of us. But Governor-elect Ferguson issued a budget memorandum yesterday that pretty much took all that and threw it right away. And we're starting from where we've all been afraid that we'd be starting, which is a session that's going to be looking at a lot of cuts before we ever talk about revenue. I feel like I've been doing like some deep dive document analysis and seeing what lines are the most worrying in this budget memorandum, but I'll flag a couple. So Ferguson says he will not contemplate any additional revenue unless there's been an exhausted effort to look at budget cuts. He says he's deeply skeptical that he can rely on balancing the budget with an untested wealth tax, and talked about issues like administrative reductions. And I want to get this language right. We'll ask agency leadership to do a zero-based budgeting review of certain programs that have just launched or are not fully implemented, including pilots. This is like identifying what's going to be high on his cut list. That's the way I read that language. So the question is, do you support, are you aware of programs that have recently been launched, are not fully implemented, or are pilots? If you do think of a program like that, I would say it is at risk right now. I'm going to be delivering such bad news over the several presentations today, and I'm feeling it already. For example, for CLS, one of our #1 priorities has been expanding the Apple Health program to cover undocumented adult immigrants, and we were able to get $40 million in the budget, $50 million in the last budget to create that program. It was just launched. It was immediately filled up. The demand was incredible. So it got shut down a couple of days after in terms of like new enrollments. It's an incredible success program. And the next logical step was to expand it. And now I feel like we are in a massively defensive posture on that bill, on that program, to make sure it didn't get cut. We have experience in the state of Washington with the basic health plan being shut down during a budget recession under the Gregoire administration, and I'm worried about repeating that. So I'm talking to advocates and making sure that they understand that where we are in terms of like being in a defensive posture. Now, I will say, if you look at the budget memorandum, Governor-elect Ferguson has really flagged a number of investments he wants to make as well, investments that are good for communities we serve. I mean, universal free school lunches, expanded childcare, much more housing investments. In the memorandum, it's $800 million in new investments, while with $4.4 billion in cuts. He says he won't cut any public safety. He'll add more law enforcement. So there's a bit of a mixed message that's happening here, and the math doesn't add up. At some point, it feels like we're going to need to have a revenue conversation, but it feels like Governor-elect Ferguson, for I think important strategic reasons, is trying to say, I'm not going right to revenue. I'm going to efficiencies and cuts first. So we've got to sort of live through that before we get to a revenue conversation. For the folks who I need to be clear about, CLS has typically not been involved in conversations related to funding around civil legal aid. We don't receive state money or federal money, and we work more on the sort of the substantive side of things. But I do feel like civil legal aid is going to be on that. We need to play some defense here. Is the message, my message at least. I'm very interested to see if Jim agrees with me. What do you think, Jim?
Oh, I've read the budget document as well. And there are, Ookla, and I'm sorry, there's nobody here from Ookla, but Ookla has now a number of programs that are in the process of implementation or having been recently implemented, and they're big budget items, including the eviction appointed counsel program and the children's representation appointed counsel program. So those, I would say, are the kinds of things that the governor-elect is looking to slow down or halt for the moment. I will note that the governor can only set out a proposal. The governor does not have authority to act on any pending requests from the judicial branch due to separation of powers issues, but he can certainly comment on them, and we have had governors do that in the past. In terms of reductions to the basic legal aid program, I think the real challenge is being realistic about, in this environment, the ability to get even a penny of expansion money. It's a fairly dire environment, and the judicial branch will be asked by the legislature to take some level of reductions. The question is, what is the starting point for those reductions? Is it the budgets that have been submitted to the legislature by the agencies in the judicial branch? Or is it the carry forward level that exists before any new policy requests are added? So there's a lot of uncertainty there as well. And I know people will be talking with budget writers and OFM and governor's staff to get some sense of what the governor-elect's thinking is on all of that. But uncertainty is the rule at this point. And for those of us who lived through 2008 to 2012, it's going to be a really, really, really difficult environment to even keep what you have.
Yeah, I mean, he tried to deliver a message by saying he was sweeping half of the fund balance in the AG's office that supports civil rights, consumer protection division, other enforcement. That was in the budget memo, and he says 6% cuts across the board for most state agencies. So it's going to
And
be a lot of
those are agencies under his jurisdiction.
yeah.
Well, we knew that the news was not going to be, you know, roses and, you know, flowers, and we were expecting some of this. I think that, you know, what the challenge for all of us is going to be, how do we make sure that we don't lose the organizations? I mean, organizations can go under, you know. How do we make sure that that doesn't happen? And if it does, how do we make sure that we can continue supplying the kind of services that are necessary? What is that going to take? What is going to have to look at life in a different way? So I think we've been discussing this a little bit since, you know, the last few months, right? And so, although you're saying you're bringing bad news, it's news that we were kind of expecting. You know, we're not shocked by it. We're not surprised by it. We need to get ready for it. And are there any questions anybody has for Antonio? Okay, thank you. I think we'll hear a little bit more from Nadia afterwards, right?
SB, just one other observation. The governor's only talking about the state general fund and related fund budgets. But the state overall budget is made up of 55% federal funds. And we have every reason to believe that there will be an all-out assault on programs like LSC and you know, federally funded programs that focus and target communities and families that are those for which the alliance works. So keep that in mind as well.
Yeah. That's the reality we're in, you know, and we knew that this would be the reality we'd be in. We don't know to what extent it's going to damage communities across the state, but we just, it's we're gonna need to buckle down. I think everybody is. I think everybody knows what we're gonna need to do. But the main thing what we have to do is be informed and communicate. Communication is gonna be key over the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and staying informed. And so we can use forums like this board meeting and other forums to make sure that we're staying informed and up to date on what's happening. And I saw that that budget from Ferguson. Yeah, so thank you very much. Any questions, any comments? Yeah, okay. So the next thing we have is the Blue Ribbon Commission on the Courts, and that's Michael Terasaki. You're still here, right, Michael? There he is.
I am. Hello, everyone. So, some of you may have heard through one source or another that Rep. Taylor is looking at putting together kind of an exploratory commission to do some research and produce a report on what I think it's phrased as, efficiencies in the court. Actually, I've got it pulled up. I can tell you exactly what it's phrased at.
I had it here.
To conduct a comprehensive analysis of the current Washington state court system, including the review of the structure, policies, practices, and procedures of the state courts, and areas where a more unified or centralized approach could improve consistency and efficiency. It was initially introduced as how can we centralize the court system? And I think for messaging reasons and to make sure it's more of a comprehensive look, it's been changed to this kind of blue ribbon commission on exploring ways to make the court more efficient with a focus on things like standardization of local rules, processes. I'm not sure if the group did the whole group see kind of the draft that I forwarded?
Yeah.
So I think there's not a ton in there. I think one place that this group or members of this group could put some comments in and some input is on the makeup of this commission. I think as it's currently listed, there isn't specifically an ATJ board member, which I did suggest and I will suggest again. I think that would be useful. And I think would also, there's a lot of membership from organizations that maybe kind of don't really care about centralizing the courts. Some of the judges associations and a lot of members of existing judiciary committees and things like that. So I think that's the place where most of the most impact could really be made is making sure we have people on the commission. Well, first making sure the commission gets established. I checked a couple days ago. I don't think this has been filed yet, but I'll check again. But this hopefully is something that the legislature will see as, you can show you're doing something, show some progress, and it doesn't really cost anything. So maybe it's a good thing for this session. But yeah, that's kind of it. I hope people can maybe put some comments in specifically to get encourage some membership from our organizations, our groups. And I'm gonna keep track of this as it goes along, but if anyone has any news that I haven't heard of about it, let me know. I think the deadline for comment is Monday, so you can share comments with me and I can pass them along, or you can send them directly in. Yeah, Karen.
Can you put something in the chat for that? If somebody wants to send in a direct comment?
Yeah, I will.
I'm sorry I haven't had a chance to really look at the document, and I will do that. I'm curious if the document reflects the state's new commitment of nothing about us without us. Like, the users of the court are the people most impacted by how our court works. Would be an interesting debate to have.
Mhm.
Probably not the judges. And it's probably not the court staff, right? But it is probably people seeking justice and also people charged with crimes. Like, the fact that we have local jurisdiction impacts people charged with crimes probably more than almost anybody, because people run their courts very differently. And so therefore people experience being criminalized, being prosecuted very differently. So are they putting, so the fact that you're having to advocate even to get an ATJ
Mhm.
voice there leads me to feel concerned that they're not really thinking about the users of the court needing to have a strong voice in how we organize a court system. So I'm happy to try to weigh in. I can add a comment to that, but I was just curious, do you feel like are they thinking about it from that perspective, like the user perspective?
So I do think Rep. Taylor is thinking about that. This actual document I think was drafted by I think it's Haley Perkins, but a court analyst for the judicial branch.
Got it.
So I think this is kind of like a first draft. I think it's really kind of skeletal right now. So on the one hand, I don't think that input has been received or implemented. On the other hand, that means maybe this is a good time for us to get in while they're kind of putting together the first draft that would actually be, circulated more widely. But I don't think I think we could advocate for that and it would be well received at this point. I don't think they're necessarily against it.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for bringing that up, because that was going to be my question as well, the community representatives on that. Those voices being on that. And let me ask you a question, Michael, about this. So the comment deadline is on Monday, and in regards to comments about the makeup of this Blue Ribbon Commission, if it does become a reality, is this the only time to comment on the makeup of this commission?
I think this is probably the most useful time.
Mhm.
I think after this, I think after if this moves forward, and I'm not a super legislative process expert, but once this is kind of filed and they're actually talking about it like in the legislature, I think it's probably going to be a lot harder for us to change things at that point. So I think this is probably our best opportunity.
Mhm.
I don't think so this was shared with this is mostly this is the members of the Interbranch Advisory Committee. And that's a pretty mixed bag that is mostly judicial and court folks anyways. So I think we're kind of the only ATJ or like legal aid or kind of client focused voice on that whole committee to begin with. So it'd be good if we could try to get this a little more the Blue Ribbon Commission a little more diverse than that group is.
So is it possible to put a link in here of where people can send their comments? I just saw Murph's there, and I'll be sending something in Murph. But where? And I know you said we could send it to you, and if people wanted to, they could send it directly, but directly to who?
I think so. This was sent to the Interbranch Advisory.
Mhm.
You can respond directly. I think you can just email to Brittany Gregory at AOC, who's she does a lot of the admin for that group. I don't really have a link. I can, if you want, I can try to just forward it to everyone in this group, maybe. Um, um,
Or we can send it out on the listserv. So that others that weren't able to attend also can have that information. Okay, would that be good? You can do that?
yeah, I'm hesitant to put it on a listserv because it was specifically sent to the Interbranch Advisory Committee members.
Okay,
But if I can look at everyone here. I can send it out to everyone here, or if you want to drop your email or let me know that you didn't get it. And sorry,
and
Murph, I saw your hand. Did you have a question?
Oh, just more of a, yeah, I think Jim put it in the chat, but if it's going to be a bill, then there's a lot of time to
Yeah.
weigh in it. And it seems like to testify also about what the makeup of the committee is. And this is exciting to me because we've been trying for years to have a more unified court system. Like it's a disaster for a lot of folks, including unification of civil and criminal and juvenile. I think what might be helpful if we, as a community, weigh in at all is to somehow connect whatever happens with this with the civil legal needs study. Hopefully that will continue because I think that could be a place where we could get community input if it was possible to add. So I know that survey is in process. If it's not too late to add, and I know folks have just started meeting, so perhaps some questions about experience with the courts for people who are low income across Washington, might be a good coordinated effort.
That's a great idea. This is happening anyway, so we might as well get that information, that data. So,
One last thing. So I had a lot of coffee this morning, so I'm talking a lot. Apparently, if anyone I haven't hunted it down yet, but apparently like 25 years ago ish, they did something like this. Oh, Murph's not okay. So and they did some sort of study and concluded that no, we don't want to do a centralization. And I'd be fascinated to see that report that that they have. So this hopefully will.
They actually didn't do a study. There was the BJA's court funding task force, but it specifically dodged the question of unification.
Okay.
yeah, I don't, definitely, we know that that issue has been around for a long time, and depending on who's on this Blue Ribbon Commission, I think will determine, how far this actually goes, but there's, I don't think it's gonna be an easy thing to do. It'll be a fight. For sure. So, we gotta be thinking who should be on it and thinking of community people to be on it as well. Yeah, so Michael, you'll keep us informed. People can comment on Monday, but again, I agree with, if this is actually a bill. Let's see. I'm looking at what else you sent here. Or to rescind the sunset. Oh, never mind. That's the triple LT. Right. But we will have time to comment and organize around it. If it's a bill, we can organize around it. So keep us posted on that, Michael, since you got your finger on that right now. Okay. Great. Any other comments or questions? Okay, great. The Equal Justice Coalition update, Nadia.
Hi. I think since the last time we've chatted, King County budget wrapped up in like October. And so that was exciting. We were able to get like a 10% increase for our programs in King County. So that was a yay amid all of the sad, frustrating state stuff that's going on. And so, yeah, as far as our state advocacy, we're just kind of getting ready for the session to start on Monday. Antonio spoke to a lot of it, so I won't add to it, but it's going to be a little bit of an uphill battle, I think. And so I'm working on kind of putting a list together of people we can reach out to testify and help us out and show up to different hearings and things. And then also I'm working on finalizing some logistics for Lobby Day, which will be on March 19th in the afternoon. So if you're interested, keep an eye out for that. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
Thank you.
SB,
Yes,
if I
Caitlin.
might, can I just add a couple comments?
Of course, Caitlin.
Thank you, and good job, Nadia. I think that's a good snapshot of where we're at currently in terms of state funding. Our efforts actually did begin a little bit begin before the beginning. In addition to a lot of planning this fall, we were also lucky enough to have several past and present Alliance members on Governor-elect Ferguson's transition team. So we were able to sort of strategically lay the ground print or the footprint about why civil legal aid is going to be so important. Especially in light of the upcoming changes, federal policy changes that we know are on the way. And I want to emphasize that, not to reassure anyone or sugarcoat anything, but a lot of, I think, some of the state and federal funding challenges are interrelated. And while I can't speak to other parts of the Okla budget. I'm only familiar really with the general civil legal aid funding. We are, the EJC, LFW and others are aggressively, preparing to defend that funding as so critical in these uncertain times for low income people. So again, I'm not editing what Nadia said, just sort of adding a couple of details that folks might not be aware of. A great opportunity, as Nadia said, to participate and get it to Olympia and make your voices heard will come up during the SLAT training in March. Timing isn't ideal, we know that, but it's going to be an opportunity when we've got critical mass to show up and talk to legislators about why that basic funding is so important now more than ever. So that's just what I would say for now.
Yeah. Is there, are you all working at all on bringing in voices of people from the community that are going to be most impacted on this? I know that, in the past there's, lobby day, so there's.
That's what this is. Absolutely, SB. And we encourage, we're going to be providing transportation from Olympia, or excuse me, from Tacoma. And we encourage everyone on this call, as well as the rest of the Alliance, to help us, get clients and constituents and community partners down to the campus.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's something any of us can work on, right?
Yeah, and you'll hear more from EJC
Okay,
about that.
great. Thank you. Thank you. Any questions for Nadia or Caitlin? Okay, all right. Thank you so much, both of you. Thank you, Nadia. Okay, so Dusty, are you still on?
Yep.
There you are. Okay.
Hi
I
there,
don't
everybody.
see I'm sorry, but these squares keep moving around, so I can't find people.
Oh, no worries. I leave my
Yeah.
camera off till it's time for me to talk to. So
Thank you. So the Pathways to Licensure Steering Committee. I'm going to
Great.
report on that.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. My name's Dusty LeMay. I've been in an ATJ meeting before, but it's been a very long time, so many of you might not be familiar with me. Thought I'd just take a second to let you know who I am. I'm one of the public legal education attorneys at Northwest Justice Project for Washington Law Help, which is usually what people know the most, even more than NJP sometimes. So I'm one of the few attorneys that works on the WashingtonLawHelp.org website. And I am the ATJ member for the Pathways to Licensure, or alternative pathways to licensure, although we were even talking about that word during the committee meeting. But basically how we're expanding our career and access and gateways to our career. Thanks for letting me be the representation for ATJ and the ATJ community on this process. I'm really excited about it. We just had our first day-long meeting. We have another one coming up in February, and I think the committee chair is also here, so I'm gonna save a couple of my minutes so that they're able to speak a little bit too if they want. The biggest updates are that we formed the subcommittees. We got going. We formed the subcommittees. We talked a lot about how we're framing our work. I think that was actually a big part of the conversation, is kind of shifting away from curriculum and the wording that we're using for actually metrics and measuring. So we had a lot of discussion around changing the way we're framing it to competencies, and what does it look like when we're measuring competencies instead of education-based curriculum. What would it look like to have portfolios? And kind of started hashing out sort of what I was thinking of as the structural kind of reframing of the language that we use to think about this stuff. We also assigned the two main subcommittees and started, we did official votes to form those and started deciding, who would lead those and to get those going. That work is really going to be taking off in the future meetings. This first meeting was just kind of historical introductions, laying the groundwork and kind of getting everybody coalesced together and heading in the same directions. Some of the notes I want to just share really quick, just like some of my takeaways. One, I want to use my role as a way to represent everybody's needs that are part of our community. So particularly ATJ Board as you all have anything that you want involved in the process, please feel free to just come to me directly one-on-one in these meetings, however is helpful, so that I can help represent that in the work. And the same thing for Northwest Justice Project. I've already been tasked with some goals from NJP that I think will probably be pretty iterative to the larger ATJ values and goals as well. So those are some of my big focuses in this process, which have already come up in the first meeting, which were, how are we looking at the pathways process as far as what is requiring of the supervising lawyers, so that people in rural areas can be more involved in being supervisors when it comes to the pathways process, as well as NJP. A lot of NJP lawyers might not have the 10-year mark that's required now for supervising, but they do have the 5-year mark. So we're trying to maybe lower some of the marks for accessibilities of who is going to be involved in also training, not just accessing the alternative pathways. There was some discussion about the word alternative in general, looking at other jurisdictions and places around the world, really, looking at Canada, around the United States, and other places that have done these alternative pathways. And if the word alternative itself is already creating potentially some problems or bias, or, is there a different way we can frame it so that it is equitable from the get-go, instead of saying, here's a different, alternative, perhaps less than kind of path. And then there was just a lot of talk around, what are the different avenues going to be, which is kind of the point of the process, right? We're going to be brainstorming those for the next couple of years, figuring out how this is going to look. What does apprenticeship look like? How does uniformity look? In what ways can we start framing the entrance in our career in a way that is actually more client-centric, which I think particularly for ATJ is really important. So, right now, a lot of our licensure process reflects the competitive trial fighter type lawyer. It's a lot of, real estate or transactional focused law test questions. It's stuff that's not going to be as necessarily relevant to our practitioners or our community at ATJ. So I was very interested, particularly in the ways that, as the group, we were brainstorming, that this new pathways process is going to allow us to recenter at least parts of our profession towards a different kind of lawyering, and what that lawyering might look like, and how it can be much more solution focused and collaboration focused instead of adversarial. And then we definitely talked about, how are we going to maintain integrity and trust in the practice while changing the gateways to the practice, right? And, I think we're constantly kind of thinking about the integrity of the profession, as well as preparation for practice, and what skills or competencies are going to be needed there. So I want to save a few minutes so that the chair could also introduce themselves and say anything if they wanted, since they're here, and to give you all a chance to just, if you have anything you want to ask me or task me with doing for the next meeting, or till the next time I see you all, please go for it. Nice to meet you, everybody.
Hi, everyone. I'm Zaida Rivera. I'm the chair of the Pathways to Licensure Implementation Steering Committee. Thank you so much, Dusty, for the great summary. And as Dusty mentioned, we had our first meeting in November. We have our next meeting February 3rd, which will be a public meeting if anyone is interested in learning or attending. And like Dusty mentioned, we have created the first two subcommittees, which are the core competency subcommittee and the supervised practice, which will kind of help ensure that all the other policies and procedures that are in place are uniform, and looking at everything at an equity lens. So that's where things are. And like I mentioned, this is the first of many subcommittees I'm sure that we'll have as we move forward to implement the 3 pathways that were recommended. And we're going to look to you all for suggestions about who could serve on these subcommittees. So thank you all, and please let us know if you have any questions about the process. And I believe in the upcoming months, there's going to be more communication about the committee itself and the work and all the different committee members. So thank you all.
Thank you both. Does anybody have any questions for Dusty or Saida? I have a question. Is there a timeline for it's a huge project. Is there a timeline that you're working with?
2 years was kind of roughly what was suggested based on how Oregon's path went, and kind of, I think that was our sort of goal point, if I remember, was 2 years.
Okay, great. any questions? Well, we'll look forward to your reports on this. And you mentioned that there's a public meeting, or the public can come to the February 23rd, was that it?
February 3rd meeting.
Oh, sorry.
It's a Monday, February 3rd. Yes.
And
We'll
that's-
have information on the WISPA website.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, great. So if there aren't any questions, then we'll move on. Thank you so much, Dusty and Saida. So the Access to Justice Conference, I'll just give a quick update. We're in the process of finalizing the call for proposals, and that should be out, well, I think we said by the end of this month or early February. And Bonnie, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But we'll be sending that out, and there's been a lot of amazing conversations and discussions, and one of the things that we are doing in this conference is making sure that we highlight and focus on Indigenous communities, not leaving out anybody else, but kind of really bringing forward the Indigenous communities in our state, and having that presence and learning from them in terms of a community that has overcome so much and still here and still struggling, but fighting and winning. And so there's a lot that we can learn, that we can all learn from our Indigenous brothers and sisters. So, and let's see, I think that's where we're at right now. There's of course a lot of the logistics that are going on, and fundraising. Nick is part of that team, that fundraising team. Let's see. If you're interested in helping with information or with fundraising, please contact Nick or Laura. There's Nick right there, thumbs up. And I mean, it's something that all of us can do. If you know of a source that would support this conference so that we can get the kind of money necessary to do it, and provide the scholarships and the training, mark your calendar for September. Thank you, Bonnie. September 18th and 19th in Yakima, and there will be virtual participation. So like we did last time. And we're getting better at it. We're trying to figure out how best to make sure that we're as inclusive as we can be, and any help that people can, any suggestions that you have, if you attended the last conference, any suggestions that you have for us to be better in that area of inclusivity and providing the resources that are necessary for folks in the disability community is important. And so I think that's, Bonnie, if there's anything else, you could just chime in. I put it in the chat. Any questions? We hope that you will consider submitting a proposal or talking to folks about submitting a proposal for a workshop. We want to make sure that this is a conference that provides relevant, necessary information, but also the opportunity to collaborate and work with folks throughout this year. I mean, we're going to be communicating between now and September, all of us will. But it's a great opportunity, and bring in new people, younger people that have not participated before, so they could make those connections in this conference. Okay, if there's no questions, then we'll go on with Post-Goldmark forums. So Goldmark's coming up on Valentine's Day, and the luncheon is at 12 o'clock. Right after the luncheon, the ATJ Board is organizing a panel, a group of folks that'll come together. We want to take that time to, we will be right in the middle of some of the things that we've been talking about. We'll be able to see what some of the impacts will mean. We might even start seeing some of the impacts of these budget discussions that we've been discussing, but also what might be coming down the pike related to the immigration policies that have been advertised about what's going to happen, the first day after this administration comes in. So we're going to have a panel of folks who will discuss those issues, but also have it be a dialogue where we can communicate what's happening, but also look at what is it that we're going to need to do. What are the tools that we'll need? What is the information we'll need? How are we going to be able to work together. What do we need to do in order to be able to work together? And our panelists will be talking about some of those things. The folks that we have right now that'll be presenting, Judge White from LCYC, updated the safety plan, and she'll be, and I know that she worked with NERP on that, and I see Malu on here, and we'll have Jaylene Scott from the Lavender Rights Project. She's the executive director who will also be a presenter. Chris Lovings, who is a community organizer and is, you know, somebody who's always in different communities around mostly King County. And Vanna Singh, ATJ board member, will be the facilitator for this. So we hope that you'll be able to attend it, encourage other people that are at the lunch to come and join us, so that we can connect, communicate, and figure out what is the best route for us to be able to do what we need to do in the climate and the environment that we're gonna be in, and we're in right now. So does anybody have any questions on that? Let's see, what date? Oh, Valentine's Day, February 14th. The luncheon is at 12 and the panel discussion is at 2, from 2 to 4 at the West End. So if you haven't signed up yet, make sure you get on LFW's website. I don't know if Caitlin's still here, but maybe put a link on there so if people haven't registered yet, they can do that. Okay, any questions? Okay, so strategic planning update, quick report. We're almost done. It's been a heavy lift and we're not done with the heavy work. We've got some more that we'll be doing between now and February when the board meets. We'll be looking at the our mission, vision, values, but really digging deep between now and the end of March on what are the roles that the ATJ board plays and what should it play? And the survey and the comments that we got from all of you and a lot more folks from around the state have been incredibly helpful in helping us make some of those determinations. And so our plan and our goal is to be complete this by the end of March. It's still a lot of work to do, as I said, but we're very, very hopeful and really excited about what it is that we're doing. And so if anybody ever has any questions about where we're at or wants any more detail, feel free to contact me or contact Bonnie and be happy to talk to you. Yeah, we'll be focused on this for the next, up until the end of March. It's going to be a big focus for us. Any questions on that? Okay, so funding reports. Abigail, I saw you here. I think you're still here.
Hi, good afternoon. Nope, morning. It's morning. Good morning, everybody. I'm Abby Dakis. I use she, her pronouns. I'm at Northwest Justice Project, and it's nice to see all of you here. Very quickly, nothing new. We are in a holding pattern still, but we, on the federal side, as you all probably know, we have a continuing resolution and no budget for the year, which has allowed for us to plan for having a flat budget. So for the big federal number is 560 million for legal aid, which is less than the request, but consistent with last year's grant. That would be $9 million for farm worker work, Native American grant, and the general legal aid services grant for Northwest Justice Project. So that's what we're planning for. We all can read the news on March 14th and see what hullabaloo is happening at the federal side as a distraction from what's going to be happening on the state side to see what's next. But that's the update on the feds. And just as a side note for broad, a disappointing thing about what's happened in the short term is that there was a request, and I don't believe that Washington was part of this, but there was a request for emergency funding for disaster relief, which I know we're all seeing every day in the news, different kinds of where civil legal aid can be of assistance. And so that was not, that additional request was not made part of whatever the act was that enabled the CR. So that's a disappointing thing, but hopefully it'll be something that can get some attention so that our colleagues around the country who are trying to respond to disaster relief efforts can get the funding they need to do their work. So.
Thank you, Abby. Appreciate that. Any questions for Abby? Okay, great. Sarah, I see you there. You can give your report on the state, Oakland.
Sure. Hey, everybody. Sarah Robbins, Director at the Office of Civil Legal Aid. I use she, her pronouns. I was hoping I could put our one pager in the chat, but it doesn't look like I'm able to upload a document into the chat. So I will send it out after the meeting so that you can all see it in writing. We have a fair number of asks this session, all fairly moderate, but extremely necessary to continue primarily focusing on the work that we're doing and keeping that work going. So we have, as Alex and Caitlin referred to before, we have a decision package for general civil legal aid. This is a combination of a vendor rate adjustment to the general contract, additional capacity for the CLEAR hotline, and some additional support around infrastructure for the specialty programs and pro bono programs that are supported through that contract to sustain increases in general infrastructure. We also have our an ask for right to counsel. So in addition to a vendor rate adjustment across the board, we're asking for a renewal of the supplemental funding that we got last session, because that was only a one-time, it was only funded one time, and that was for an additional 10 attorneys that were deployed across the state. And then we're asking for an additional 5 attorneys that would be allocated in King County, where we're seeing the most acute increase in eviction filings and the place that's just having the hardest time keeping up with the eviction crisis. We have an ask for our children's representation program, which is the next step in our implementation plan to implement attorneys for all children in dependencies statewide. We're on a schedule, a statutory schedule with full implementation by 2028. So we have a request for our next set of counties. We just went live in our biggest county to date this month, which is Pierce County. And in the next iteration, we will primarily be implementing in Eastern Washington, including Spokane, and then on the west side in Clark. We have also for our children's representation program, we're asking for money for a law school pipeline to do a clinical program at all 3 law schools to help get people while they're in law school prepared to do children's representation. We're doing this in partnership with the Office of Public Defense, who has essentially an identical ask for the public defense parent representation side of dependencies. We also are asking for a vendor rate adjustment for our pre-RTC, a vendor rate adjustment for our reentry contract, our Blake funding, our civil response to Blake is we've been awarded that funding on a year-by-year basis. So we're just asking for a continuation of what we are currently receiving. We also have a request for a small amount for our kinship care program. That includes a vendor rate adjustment and some additional staffing for the kinship care legal aid hotline. A vendor rate adjustment for our domestic violence contract. And then I think our last one, which is our only really new request, we have a decision package for a right to counsel, a new right to counsel in long-term care. So for individuals that are being funded by Medicaid in long-term care facilities, adult family homes and assisted living homes and assisted living facilities and a few other care facilities, not nursing homes, that operates a little bit differently. We will be, hopefully if we are funded, we will be setting up a right to counsel when people are being discharged from those long-term care facilities. DSHS approached us. They were audited by the federal agency Centers for Medicaid and Medicare, told that our state is out of compliance for the way that we discharge people from these long-term care facilities. And to come into compliance, we have to have a comparable system to our residential landlord tenant program. And since Washington has a right to counsel in that space, a comparable program would also have to have a right to counsel program. So we're working with DSHS, some advocacy organizations, long-term care ombuds program, and others, hoping that we can set that up. So that's all of our OCLA's direct budget asks. We are also supporting the Department of Commerce in their ask for additional victims of crime or VOCA funding. There is a statutory allocation for legal aid. That money has diminished over time. And there is a push this session to essentially statutorily set a floor for the amount of money coming into that program, since we've seen such a decline at the federal level. We are also supporting Commerce in their foreclosure fairness program, which we also get some legal aid funding through, because that source of funding has also dwindled over time based on how it's set up. I think that's it. Everything we're doing this session is all around budget. We don't have any policy asks.
So thank you, Sarah. I have a question, but I want to see if anybody has a question for Sarah or any comments? No? Okay. So thank you for listing all those efforts that you'll be hoping to see happen in light of what Antonio reported earlier regarding the legislative session overview and the Governor-elect Ferguson's plan to cut. And we still don't know what's going to come down in terms of federal money for civil legal aid in the state or anything else for the state, to tell you the truth. How hopeful are you that some of that will actually happen?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I have not, I saw Ferguson's, response to the budget. I think I am still processing that, especially compared to what we saw from Governor Inslee, a few weeks ago. I don't know. I know that we have been meeting with, for the last month, we've been meeting with legislators with, information about, one, we are being very modest in our asks. Yeah, I don't know. I think I will have more information in the coming weeks as we learn more. Cautiously optimistic, cautiously not. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I think that we're going to be in this soup of uncertainty and some certainty as we move forward. But thank you, Sarah. And if there's, the work that is being done through LFW, through Equal Justice for Lobby Day, all those things are going to help with, hopefully will help with getting some of the money, whatever money there is, but I think it's going to be very challenging. But so thank you. Caitlin, are you still on here, Caitlin?
I am.
You are.
Thanks for making time for me. Happy New Year, everyone. I know we're all feeling a little dubious and the news isn't great, but one thing that is good news is that the resistance starts with us, all of us on this call today. We do not have to accept cuts to injustice. We do not have to support agendas that go against the best interest of our clients, your clients, and that we will have the wherewithal somehow, to continue to do our anti-poverty work and pro-justice work. And we will be strategic and intentional in that work. Thank you for the opportunity to give a couple of updates from the Legal Foundation. Just to get a couple of pretty important housekeeping notes out of the way. 2024 was not a regular year for our grant making. We did make some accelerator grants. Those are sort for 1-year funding projects. The big news was the LFW approved $5 million over the next 3 years to expand civil legal aid programming for Native American communities. So 9 organizations will receive funding. You can find them on our website, legalfoundation.org. I think I saw Emily here. Emily, if you want to throw that up so folks can see. We're really proud of it. This was identified in the Civil Legal Needs Study of 2015, and also the ATJ Board's own state plan that Native communities experience injustice and a need for civil legal aid at a much higher rate than even other poor people. So we're trying to do something, chip away at the problem. And so anyway, for more information about how we're going to tackle it as a state and as a community, go to our website. 2025 will present some funding, larger scale funding opportunities. I want to note that a race equity grants program has been renewed. We're going to make, our plan right now is to make 20 grants up to $50,000 each. Those applications will be due on April 15th, and our grants team will host an informational webinar for the community and any organization that thinks they might want to apply on March 13th. So mark your calendars. Oh, and Alex, thank you for putting that in the chat. Could you also just throw in Emily and Ariel's addresses, email addresses? Because they're sort of the front line of, how to receive some support for work that your organizations are doing, or if you've got the next big idea. Thank you. Our regular partnership grant applications will be due at the end of the summer as usual. Nothing new there that we're anticipating. I think right now, existing partnership grantees, it's reasonable to expect in this year of unknowables, steady funding, steady, stable funding. But more details about the process and the application, et cetera, will be forthcoming. And then finally, sort of going back to where I started, I want to thank the ATJ Board for hosting this session after the Goldmark lunch on February 14th. Oh, I should invite everyone. Thank you, SB. I should invite everyone to the Goldmark lunch on February 14th. So we're going to be talking about a lot of really important things that affect low-income people in the near future. And this session that the ATJ Board is putting on at 2:00 on February 14th is going to be critical to informing the LFW Board and other people who are not at this meeting in particular, but our supporters, our donors, our stakeholders, people who care and want to know what to do, want to know what's going on and how they can help support our movement, the equal justice movement in our state. And I think I'm hoping some conversations are had and presentations will be made that inform the LFW Board. We are updating and revamping our emergency grant process. So I'm not sure that that's reflected on our website right now, but it will be. And in the months to come, we'll be entertaining emergency grant applications from organizations whose clients are going to be unfairly facing some of the burdens that we anticipate are coming down from changes to, policies at the federal level. I can't. I don't mean to, be mysterious and talking about it, but we know that hard times are here, and we're working with the Alliance and the community and in community to help address some of those challenges as they arise. We can't do everything, but we can do a lot. So happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you, Caitlin. Thank you very much for that. Are there any questions for Caitlin? We got a quiet group today. I'm not used to it. Okay. Thank you very much, Caitlin. Alex, I had you on here also. Did you have something to report?
Sure. It's been a while since I've given an update, so I have a little bit more to add. Hi everyone, I'm Alex. If I haven't met you before, I'm now LFW's annual campaign director. Something really exciting that happened towards the end of 2024 was our annual associates campaign. We had 13 firms participate last fall. Our collective goal was to raise $250,000. This is a 2-week campaign and we were totally blown away by the results. So not only did almost every firm participating beat the individual firm goals they set, but we raised almost twice as much as that collective goal. We raised over $425,000. So it was a record-breaking amount for the campaign, super exciting. You'll hear a little bit more about it during Goldmark and later on. So I just wanted to share that update. And then I'll add a little bit more to what Caitlin and Espy have shared about the upcoming Goldmark luncheon. So we'll be at the Westin again on February 14th. It's from 12 to 1:30 with a virtual option. We're actually also going to be hosting a virtual watch party in Spokane for the first time. So if you're interested in that, please feel free to reach out. I'll leave my email in the chat. And then just something else to note, we're going to be celebrating LFW's 40th anniversary. So it's kind of a unique event this year. And then we'll have Bree Blackhorse, the first missing and murdered Indigenous people prosecutor for Eastern Washington's U.S. Attorney's Office, as our keynote speaker this year. So super exciting. And then we'll also be giving out 2 awards this year. So we're giving out the Goldmark Award to Nancy Isserlis, and the President's Award will be awarded to Janet Varon, so the Executive Director of Northwest Health Law Advocates. So super exciting. If you have any questions about registering or having your organization table the event, please reach out. Again, I'll add my email in the chat and then the link to register. So yeah, that's it.
Great. Thank you, Alex. Thank you. So if you haven't already registered for the luncheon, please do. You're going to hear this probably a lot. So thank you everybody for your reports, and thank you everyone who presented today and communicated what we need to know. Really, really appreciate it. And I think that we're just going to have to make sure that we don't have to wait till a meeting like this happens to communicate with one another. And I think this community does that very well. So are there any other updates or announcements? I want to make sure everybody has on their calendar. If you're going to attend SLAT, it's going to be Monday, March 17th through the 19th. And the theme is Legal Toolkit, Build Community, Build Skills, Build Momentum is the theme for SLAT this time around. And it's going to be in Tacoma. Caitlin, is that your hand up?
Yes, I'm sorry. I feel bad. I'm taking up so much airtime.
That's okay.
I would just like to respectfully ask, NGP has been without an executive director for over 6 months now, and I would just like to request that the ATJ board invite the board chair of Northwest Justice Project to come to the next meeting and, provide an update and maybe a timeline. So we all know, as we've been discussing and is obvious from all of these meetings, the alliance is so interdependent on one another, that I think it would be really helpful for all of us who work in partnership with NJP to know sort of what their leadership plan is. Hickory and Abby have done such a great job for us, and we all love working with them. But now, it might be good for an update at the board level.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Take note of that. Thank you, Caitlin. Anybody else? Any other announcements or updates that you want to share with who's left here? People have had to leave, so I don't want to take up too much more of your time. Are we good? Well, we've got a lot of work to do, so thank you very much for being here. Murph, did you have something? Because you took yourself.
Super fast. I've been reaching out to legal aid colleagues in Los Angeles. And so if you have colleagues there, they really could use some support. Right now, some are having to evacuate their offices and those kinds of things. So if you know anyone, they would appreciate, I think, support, and they're setting up disaster clinics. So if you know pro bono attorneys in Washington that know disaster law, they could use help. And also, as these fires are happening, there's immigration raids starting to happen at the same time. So our colleagues are out there, I let them know we're all thinking about them, and just wanted to say that.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I've been in touch with some people. I have family down there and people that have businesses down there. And there's businesses right up the hill that are gone, and homes that are gone, and clients whose homes that are gone. So yeah, it's terrible. So yeah, thank you very much for that. So there aren't a whole lot of people on here, so please make sure you share this with others. And if people need any more information, should we contact you, Murph? You're on mute. You're still muted. You're still muted. There you go.
I know I kept double mute. Sorry about that. Yes, feel
That's
free to
okay.
contact me and I can connect people with folks in LA.
Okay, great. So if you could get the word out, please. I think that's, everybody can do some of that, is get the word out to other attorneys, people that could lend some support down there. It's getting better. And I think we're, when it comes to disasters and these kinds of disasters, it's just beginning. It's just beginning. So we need to make sure that we're, have some kind of pipeline of communication around these things.
And just a little plug there, SB. So all of the FEMA disaster 101 legal aid response stuff on Washington Law Help used to be incredibly out of date. I just rewrote it a few months ago comprehensively based on the federal,
Wow.
the 900-page federal manuals. So, and the FEMA stuff is pretty out of state applicable. So Murph, most of that stuff is going to apply for California folks. And there's about 5 different publication sets that, if you just go into Washington Law Help and type FEMA or disaster, either one in the search bar, you'll see the first major one is like, how can FEMA help me after disaster? Then there's an entire booklet about how to do insurance claims after the disaster, how to get unemployment insurance after disaster, how to do small business loans because they're so confusing and people don't realize that it's actually the small business disaster loans that repair and replace a ton of stuff, particularly at community levels. It's the most comprehensive, updated, and correct FEMA information that's ever been on Washington Law Help. And it should be hopefully it should be more helpful than what's out there from FEMA right now, based on when I was reading all the stuff from FEMA. So that's something that we haven't plugged for community yet because there haven't been fires yet in Washington since I let them out. So this is such an off-season fire that we didn't plug it again either because it's California, but just to let you all know, everything on Washington Law Help is updated, accurate, and is really tailored around fire, particularly because it's us, fire stuff because of Washington. So share that stuff too. It's one of those things where Washington Law Help, we don't want our stuff always plugged for out-of-state use because we have to be cautious of that, but the FEMA stuff absolutely can be.
Absolutely, it's federal. So yeah. Thank you, Dusty. That's very helpful. I know somebody I'm going to share that with when we get off here.
Yeah, please do. And I being the attorney that wrote all that stuff, it is a really nebulous, intimidating process to go through all those manuals. So my goal was that, all these people in this kind of crisis, and I have lost my home and all my possessions before, so I truly know how horrible people feel right now. And to have that mental state going on, to be able to navigate all that stuff, my hope is that these publications make that easier for folks living through that loss.
Thank you. Thank you so much for chiming in. So
yeah, absolutely.
Please, all of you, get the word out about to other attorneys, to anybody that could be helpful to the folks down in California. There's a lot of help that's needed, and share the FEMA document from Washington Law Help with the folks down there in California that so that they can be able to get some relief, hopefully, about what's happening. It's terrible. Anyway, thank you everybody for being here and for providing the information that we need. And we'll be working together. Thank you, Caitlin. Thank you, Murph. Thank you, everyone. Okay.
Thank you, everyone. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.